What's that?
I'm here.
Oh, you're already here. Oh, cool.
Yes.
Hi, Sharon. All right.
Hi.
So we're just wrapping up and talking about a little bit of you and a little bit about our last guest speaker and everybody's journeys and career paths. And so thank you for kind of jumping in here and joining us.
Sure.
And you have your video on?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. I'm not seeing everybody yet, but let me just minimize this over here. Cool. All right, and so welcome to Nebula Academy. This is our software engineering bootcamp, and as you can see, everybody's cameras are on, and you can see everybody in the meeting here. This is our online classroom, so we're excited to have you a part of this today. And of course, we are recording the session, and the folks are excited to hear about your career path and what you kind of where you've gotten to where you are today. I've kind of given them a little bit of insight. We've been every week we do a lot of LinkedIn kind of digging and understanding so they can get ready to be using it as a tool to get themselves jobs after the program. So we're excited to have you, and I've kind of done a little bit of an intro of our background and who you are. So I'm going to hand it off.
What did you say, Lori?
Just basically how we met and my role at Microsoft when I was working for Microsoft, and how we met and your role as CIO for Suffolk County.
Right.
And how we did some work together and some philanthropy and doing some student programs for young girls. And that we worked together, and then you moved up to Albany to kind of pursue your career further, and the rest is history, kind of in your LinkedIn profile.
Okay, all right. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is indeed a pleasure to be here with you all this afternoon. As you've heard, my name is Sharon Cates Williams. And, you know, sometimes people ask me, why am I hyphenated? And this might be something that might be of value to all of you. I felt it was important to save the Cates name within my name, because for many years I was Sharon Cates, and a lot of the work that I did in the IT space, I was known as Sharon Cates. So when I became Sharon Cates Williams, I thought it was important to keep that Cates in there just in case people were looking for me, because I didn't want to be forgotten, right? So I started on a typewriter. How many of you even know what a typewriter is? Anybody ever used a typewriter? Actually, I think you all know what a typewriter is. How many of you ever used a typewriter? Oh, okay, got a couple of hands up. All right. So I started
typewriters. I've repaired them too.
So I started on a typewriter, and it's, you know, it's kind of funny when I think about it, because my dad always told me to learn how to type. And of course, you know, I was dead set against that, because I was going to conquer the world. I was going to do much more than that. So I started typing in junior high school, and by the time I got into high school, I was pretty good at it. And back then it was the ASDF, GH, JKL, and you know, you kept your fingers on the keyboard. And actually today when I type, I still type with my fingers on the keyboard, because it's just, I've been doing it since junior high school. And in high school, I remember my dad asking me, are you taking typing? And I just thought, God, yes, I'm taking typing. When I went to college, are you taking typing? It's like, yes, I'm taking typing. But I really had very little respect for that skill. And that's something that I want to impress upon all of you. You probably have a skill today that you have very little respect for. Okay, when you think about technology today, and whether it's blogging or using the social media and things like that, that's a skill. That's a skill set that you probably look at and don't put too much value on it. But everything that you do has value. So I had this typing skill, and I went off to college, and I was going to, you know, I was going to do big things at IBM. That was my plan. But of course, when I graduated, couldn't get that interview at IBM, no matter how hard I tried. And I ended up using my typing skill. Actually, when I was in high school and I used to have those summer jobs, a lot of my friends worked in retailing, in the retail space. They were cashiers and things like that in stores. But I was always able to get an office job because I knew how to type. I had, you know, a good speed. I was pretty accurate. And when I think back at some of those summer jobs that I had, one year I thought I had the most boring job in the world. And I was working in this little small office, and my job was to go through this big book and contact all of these corporate companies and ask them for their financial statements. And I didn't even know what a financial statement was. But I did it, and about 2 weeks after doing it, the statements started to come in. And one day I opened up the package and I sat there and I started reading the statement, and I learned a lot about finances. So for just that little 6-week summer job, I walked away with a little piece of knowledge that I had no idea that I would ever use again in my life. But knowing what a P&L was, and understanding income and revenue and profit and loss, I got all of that out of just sitting there one day reading one of those statements that I had been calling all these companies up for. And my typing came into play because I created a spreadsheet, what would be considered a spreadsheet today. That's what I created back then. So I went on, to school and graduated. And again, as I mentioned, I wanted to work for IBM because I wanted to do great things, but that opportunity never came. And a friend of mine offered me a job at the Borough of Manhattan Community College. I don't know if many of you are familiar with BMCC down in New York City, Lower Manhattan. Somebody has someone who graduated from BMCC?
My sister worked there.
Oh, she works there now. Okay. So I worked
in the psychology department.
Oh, awesome. Well, I worked in the admissions office. That was my job. And again, I got that job because I knew how to type, that little IT skill. And when I was in the admissions office, I discovered a little machine that was sitting off to the side, covered up. And when I uncovered it, it looked like a glorified typewriter to me. And it was a Wang word processor. Now, I know I'm dating myself now because Wang doesn't even exist anymore. But it was this word processing machine. And what's a word processor? Well, it's Microsoft Word standalone, okay? And it was this machine that looked like a glorified typewriter to me. And of course, I was instantly attracted to it because why? I knew how to type, right? So anything that looks like a typewriter, I was attracted to. And I did a little research, talked to the woman in HR and found out that BMCC, they had purchased these machines about a year ago, and they had never taken advantage of the training that came along with the purchase of the machine. So I asked, the HR director if it was okay if I went for the training. She said it was 10 seats. If I found 9 other people to go, we could all go for the training. So of course I did. I went around the office and I found 9 people, and we went off to this 2-week Wang word processing training class, and that changed my life completely. Now forget about IBM. I was totally focused on this little typing skill that I had and utilizing that skill on this fancy word processing machine. I had worked with a Selectric typewriter in the past, and that was the best that I had ever used. But to learn this Wang word processing machine, and not only did I master the machine itself, but then I was curious as to how the data was saved and what was that process. And I started getting into the administrative side of the Wang word processing machine, backing up the data at night, things like that. And my whole world opened up, and great things started to happen for me because I was sort of on the cutting edge. I was young, I was eager, and I was not afraid to ask questions. And that's something that I would stress to all of you. It's all about relationships at the end of the day. You can't be afraid to ask people questions. No question is a stupid question. And if they look at you like you're crazy, don't worry about it. Ask your question anyway and hope that you get an answer. But I asked questions. And even today in the job that I have, and I'll get to that in a minute, I still ask questions all the time. So never be afraid to do that. And always think about everything that you do, there's something that you can learn. So even in that Wang world that I was in, there was something more for me to learn. Once I mastered the word processing side, I went on to the administrative side. So I ended up leaving BMCC, of course, and I took a job at what would be considered a training school. It was called the American Business Institute. And they were a word processing training school. And you still have institutions like that that exist today that focus on different things. I mean, exactly what you're doing right now. This is an institution that's focused on development, right? So this was focused on, word processing and things of that nature. And I went there, and again, because I had this skill and I had all this extra knowledge, at 25, I walked in and I was a supervisor, and I was supervising a bunch of old people. They were like 32, 35, They were old to me. And I became their boss at 25. So I did that for about 2 or 3 years. And because it was a business school, I then started getting involved with doing lesson plans. And oh, somebody's calling me. I'm going to not answer that. So I started getting into lesson plans. And again, it was just something that I was tinkering with. I was not a teacher. I didn't have an education background, did not know that that was a skill set that many, many years later would benefit me. So I left American Business Institute and went to work for a Park Avenue law firm. And I was the only minority at that firm. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I was the only minority that they had ever had at that firm. And that was an amazing experience for me. And that's something, you know, we could talk about. That's a whole different session to talk about being the only minority in an environment that was full of men. And there were 2 other women that worked there. They were not minorities. So when I tell you that it was hard, it was hard. But I persevered and I continued to learn. And I learned about LexisNexis when I was there, another technology. I would watch the paralegals leave the office every day to go to the public library to do all of this research. And in sitting down at lunchtime one day, talking to a paralegal, so what do you do when you go to the library? Oh, really? Well, what are you working on when you go there? And she mentioned LexisNexis. And I said, well, is that a machine that we could get here in the office? And she was like, I don't know. So I contacted them and I looked it up. And sure enough, that was a machine that we could bring in the office. It was a subscription service. You paid a monthly lease for the machine, and then you paid for the access for the data. And I put all that together and I took it to the senior partner who, when I knocked on his door and asked if I could have 5 minutes of his time, you can imagine, he looked at me like, oh, and he actually said, oh, you must be Sharon. It's a conversation for another day, right? Like, how you know my name? But okay, conversation for another day. All right, but that's what he said. You must be Sharon. Yes, I am. And I need 5 minutes of your time because I want you to read this proposal, which he did. And they did end up bringing LexisNexis in the office. And I even found a place for it to sit. It sat in the library. We had a little law library, and I cleared a space, brought the vendor in, and they set it up and changed the way that that office worked. One day, reading the paper, I saw an ad to go and be a word processing supervisor, an ad for a word processing supervisor at Lehman Brothers. Lehman Brothers, Fortune 500 firm, financial services. And I said, what the heck? Let me apply. May not get the job. Probably not going to get the job. You know how we talk ourselves out of things all the time? We always say to ourselves, I'm not going to do that because I'm probably not going to get the job. There's somebody else that's much more talented and more experienced. But I went for it anyway. I went for it, got called for an interview. And as a matter of fact, I was trying to look for it because I still have the little ad from the paper. I kept it. I was going to show it to you. And I went and I ended up getting that job. And I stayed at Lehman Brothers for 16 years. And again, conversation for another day, but it was hard. It was very hard. Again, being a minority, being a female, being in that environment. I was smart. I was young. I asked a lot of questions. And when people saw me coming, I know in their minds, they thought, oh God, here she comes. And I always had something in my hands. And I would sit in meetings. And this is something for everyone, I think would be valuable for you. But I always got to my meetings early. Always be on time. On time is late. Write that down. On time is late. So always be on time. So I was always on time. And I would sit there and my colleagues would come in and we would be sitting around the conference table. They would look at me, I would look at them, and I was always very polite because my parents raised me to be polite. I would always say good afternoon or whatever. And then they would engage in conversations amongst themselves. And I felt that they purposely talked about things that they knew I wasn't doing, such as mowing the lawns on Saturday, out playing golf with their friends. Things like that, things that I was not doing. But while they were chattering and, off to the side doing that, I was sitting at where I was sitting, and I had materials prepared because I was ready for the meeting. So at previous meetings, whenever the managing director and he would come in and he would talk about different companies that we were doing business with, I would always write the company name down, and then I would go back and I would look that company up. So at the next meeting, if that company came up again, I would have something to say. And one of the companies that came up in a meeting was BlackBerry. Remember the Blackberries? You probably remember the BlackBerry phones.
Yeah.
But when BlackBerry first came out, it was an alphanumeric pager.
Yeah,
And
research
see,
in motion.
I'm sorry?
Research in motion.
That's right. Yeah, REM, right? REM, that was the first name, yes. And, you know, that they came up in a conversation, and the managing director was thinking about adding that to the technology portfolio. Now, if you know anything about financial services firms, what they do is they have clients. They have, you know, very wealthy clients, and they set up what's called these different portfolios. And there was a technology portfolio, and they were thinking about adding REM into that technology portfolio. And if I was at my office, because I'm working from home because of COVID, if I was at my office, I would be able to show you my very first alphanumeric pager, because I still have it. I saved it. So one day I got called in and I was asked, did I know anything about REM? And of course I did. And the managing director handed me that alphanumeric pager, and he said, I want you to test it out and come back and tell me if it should be added to the portfolio. And of course, you know what happened to REM, went on to be BlackBerry, and it was definitely something that I recommended go into that portfolio. But because of that particular experience, the next project that came up was with a gentleman by the name of Stephen Jobs. Steve Jobs walked into Lehman Brothers trying to sell his computer that was called the Next, N-E-X-T machine. You can look it up. He had this machine that he wanted to, that he was marketing, and it was supposed to be better than what we know today, a PC. Okay, PCs were just coming on the market. The Wang word processors were going away, and this thing called a PC was on the market with this little product called Microsoft that had word processing and an Excel applications, and we didn't know what those things were. And Steve Jobs had his machine that didn't use Microsoft products. It used other products, and I was asked to set up a lab to test out the two machines, because Lehman Brothers was going to migrate off of Wang onto one of these two platforms. And Mr. Jobs used to come in once a week, and this was like a 6-week project, and I got to pick my staff. So all my friends, I had them working in the lab, and we worked in the lab, and we recreated documents on both of those two platforms. And Mr. Jobs would come in, and I would say to him, well, Mr. Jobs, this is really not working. The Microsoft product is better. And he would start yelling at me and tell me that I didn't know what I was doing. Again, topic for another day. I remained persistent, and, you know, and I continued to do the job. And of course, we went on and we selected the PCs, and we did not select the next machines. And I probably do not appear anywhere in any of Steve Jobs' biographies, but he's in mine because I did have that experience with him. So again, relationships, you know, always having confidence in yourself. That's what I want to instill in all of you. Never doubt yourself. No question is a dumb question, and never be afraid to take on the next project. So I stayed with Lehman Brothers for 16 years, as I mentioned, and during that time, I moved to Long Island. I was living out in Suffolk County, way out in Suffolk County. I'm a Bronx girl. What the heck am I doing on the island? Don't know what I'm doing on the island. All my friends wanted to know what the heck I'm doing out there on the island. We got to take the train. It's 2 hours to get to you. We're not coming to be. But out on the island, I was, and 9/11 happened, and a lot of things changed for all of us. And I ended up leaving Lehman, and I started working in government at the town of North Hempstead in Nassau County, Long Island. And that was my first opportunity to be a CIO. And boy, oh boy, how exciting that was to be in charge of the IT environment, and to, again, continue to establish relationships. And from there, I went to Suffolk County and became their first ever CIO there, and met Lori, and we did some great things, and met tons of folks that today I still have a relationship with. Now, I'll tell you something about Lori. Lori sent me an email, just less than a week ago? Was it even a week? I don't even remember. And I saw her name, and that's all I needed. So I saw her name and I thought, oh, whatever she wants, I'm going to clear my schedule and do it for her. And that's what relationships are all about. And that's what you need to establish. Everybody that you come into contact with, you should consider that to be a relationship that you may need in the future. You may need someone for a reference. You may need someone just to run an idea past. You all are developers. You may need to talk about something that you're working on with a fellow developer to say, hey, does this sound right? Does this sound like it's going to work? What ideas do you have? Do you have any modules that perhaps you can lend me that I can use for this project? Things like that. Everything that you do and everything that you create should be reusable. Okay, because that's the world that we're in today. Never create something that only you can use. Create something that you can always reuse for something else. So here I am in Albany, 2008. I shifted my family from Long Island and came up to Albany on a whim. Again, I was at an event and I spoke, and the CIO of here for the state of New York heard me speak. And as I was walking out and headed back to Long Island, she slipped me her card and she said, give me a call. Called her up and she said, hey, what do you think about coming to Albany? And I said, Albany? I said, nobody goes to Albany. That's upstate. Nobody goes beyond Westchester. That's upstate. No way, no way. And she was like, no, well, come up and visit me and let's talk. And I did. And she described some of the projects that I would be working on. This is when Wi-Fi was just, a word, a buzzword at the time that we all were using and interested in. And she had talked to me about heading up the New York State Broadband Council. And what that would do would bring broadband or Wi-Fi to areas, especially rural areas. And when I was on Long Island as the CIO of Suffolk County, I had actually tried to light up all of Suffolk County with Wi-Fi, brought in a vendor and everything. And as you can imagine, it was very difficult to do that back at that time because it's very expensive to do that, for all sorts of reasons. But I did have that under my belt. And when I came up here to Albany, I did head up the Broadband Council, and I did serve as the Chief Technology Office because I served under the CIO. I was the first ever African-American Chief Technology Officer for the entire state of New York. So that was like a big deal for me. And that's not a story for another day because that was a good story. That was a good experience. And again, just relationships. And one day I was asked to come to a meeting, the governor's office, and they were working on some website project. And they had consultants in, and they had some other internal developers in, and they just couldn't get this website right. And someone had recommended that they call me and invite me to the meeting. So I showed up at this meeting over at the state capitol, and I'm sitting in the room and I'm sort of sitting off to the side because nobody knows who I am and I'm really not sure why I'm there, but I was asked to come. And I'm listening to what they want to do. And this is when Governor Patterson actually was the governor at the time. And First Lady Patterson wanted to do something for kids, and it was like a healthy kids website, and she wanted school children every week to log how, the foods that they were eating, and, if they had the exercise and how much weight loss and things like that. And she just didn't like the designs that they were doing. And I sat and I listened. And at the end of the meeting, I said to them, I said, well, you know what, I have some ideas. And everybody's like, well, who is she? Right? So I told them, I have some ideas. And if you just give me a week, I'll come back and I'll present a proposal, which I did. And they loved my idea. And we ended up doing that work. But there was someone sitting in the room who I didn't even recognize. I mean, I probably never even looked in her direction, but she was in the room. She saw me and she wrote my name down. And about 2 years later, I got a phone call from this woman who was over at the state education department at that time. And she asked me if I would come and meet with her. And to be honest with you, I thought, oh, well, she probably wants me to do a project. She gave me a little intro. She told me that she was sitting in the room at that time and I'm familiar with your work and blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. And so I went to meet with her and she described this amazing job that was being created just for me. And it is the job that I have today. I am the Deputy Commissioner at the State Education Department. We provide governance and oversight for 700 school districts, as well as all of the colleges and universities, including private colleges and universities. And as you can imagine, with the pause going on and the schools being closed, my life is a living hell. But again, just to have that opportunity to make that transition from IT into doing something else. And I still have the IT department still reports to me, the CIO reports to me, but it's just a small sliver of the work that I do today. Because I have learned through the years, all the little things that I've picked up through the years, I am extremely strategic, and I can look at a problem and solve it, because I never view problems as being problems. And my staff, they know that. Don't come in my office and tell me that the room is on fire. Tell me that the room is on fire and this is how we're putting the fire out. And that's who I want you to be. Don't focus on the problem. Focus on the solution, because that's what people are looking for. Anybody can sit back and describe the problem and all the reasons why we can't fix it. But as developers, right, that's your job to take the problem and come up with a solution. And when you approach things from that manner, people are going to notice it and you're going to feel good about it as well. Never sit back and wait for anybody to create things for you. Always try to create things for yourself. I left out a lot of little pieces in my little biography there. And some of it is not even important, okay? But what I've learned along the way is everything that I do, every experience that I have, there's always something that I can learn from it. And even today, when I sit down and I sit with educators, remember I told you, I'm not an educator. I can speak education speak because I've been sitting next to educators, but I'm not an educator. When I worked at Lehman Brothers, I was like this liaison between developers and the investment bankers, because I could understand what they wanted to do and then take that back to the developers and say, okay, this is what they're trying to do. What can you create that's going to solve that? I mean, we were translating training documents into different languages before that was even done. Why? Because Lehman Brothers is an international company. So anything that was created in New York, if it went over to the Tokyo office, it had to be written in the various languages over there, which there were 3 or 4. And guess who got to travel and do all that stuff? Me. How great was that? Those were the perks. Okay, but always, find your niche. So today you're training and you're studying to do something, and that's great. But always think outside of the box. What else can I do? How far can I take it? When Lori and I used to do the Digi Girls, I would always challenge the young people. Okay, this is the world that we're living in today, and traffic is going to get worse. How solve the traffic problem in the future? And I'm looking for the young person that's going to think about the sky and all that airspace up above. And what can we do with that? And once I got the young people even reaching that high, I mean, the look on their faces, and I could see the wheels turning in their heads. This is what life is all about. We're living in COVID right now, COVID-19. It has changed the way that we do everything. You're doing online learning, which is something that even our kindergartners, all the way up to our 12th graders, everybody's doing online learning. And one of the projects I'm working on right now is to figure out how do we reopen 700 school districts? How do we do that? And the colleges and the universities, how do we advise them on what they should do? And everybody's looking to us for answers that, to be honest with you, we don't really have, because nobody's done this before. And that's your world that you're living in right now. You're going to be faced with things that nobody's ever done before, but you got to keep reaching. and think about everything, every person that comes before you every Friday, or how often you're having guest speakers. You got to take something away from every single one of those sessions, because my life is my life, and what I've gone through is what I've gone through, but you can still learn from me. You can learn from me that no question is a bad question. On time is late. Always be on time. Be confident in your ability. You don't need anybody to tell you that you're good. You don't need anybody to tell you that. It's nice to get the attaboy from time to time, but if you don't have that confidence yourself, and if you don't take control of your career, okay, there's a difference between having a job and a career, okay, so you figure that out, all right? If you don't take control of either one, it's just not going to happen for you. But you never want to give up. You always want to keep pushing forward. So I think I've talked enough. I want to hear from you. So what questions do you have for me, or tell me something about yourself? Let's spend the rest of the time.
Really, like what you said about just having confidence in yourself and knowing, your worth and I take that really serious. Like recently I left the job because of that, because it was almost like mind games with my boss. Like he would tell me, oh, you're not that good. You're not. And I transformed. I know I'm good because I transformed that office. When I first started there, it was like I started at one office. When I left, he had 3 separate offices. So, but it was just that, that control to, to view yourself in this way so that you don't see your value. And so that like really hit me, because it's like, know your worth, know what you know, and know that you have something to offer.
I can look back on some of those situations that I mentioned, are conversations for another day. And I know some of the comments things that people used to say to me, and just how I was treated. It was on purpose, because it was designed to hold me back. Okay. But, and sometimes you have to walk away from things. So kudos to you, for standing up for yourself.
Looks like we have a hand up from Solomon.
Oh.
Hi, Sharon. My name is Solomon West. I wanted to ask you a question along the lines of the pace of the technology sphere in the U.S. abroad is getting to the point where it's nowhere near maximum capacity. So critical mass is far down the line, and there's so many technologies coming out nowadays for database management and stuff like that. I wanted to know how you keep yourself with relevant knowledge, in terms of, for instance, cloud storage and virtualization and stuff like that. How do you keep yourself up to date with these new technologies?
Okay, so a couple of things that I do. Number one, of course, read whatever you can. Okay, read articles, and you can tell the difference between an article that has real value for you versus an article that's just an ad from a vendor. Okay, so I tend to just, once I realize that, oh, this is a vendor article, I don't always stay with it. So that's number one. Number two, talk to people. Join any kind of groups, any kind of technology groups, and make that a topic so that, you're all talking about what you know, and you're feeding off of each other. And I love doing that. I love user groups is the word I was trying to say. I love being a part of different user groups, because now I'm learning from everybody's experience. So seek that out. And this group that you have here, this is going to be one of your user groups as well in the future. So you all need to stay in touch. The third thing that I like to do is just talk to people. I like to talk to my staff who are doing some of the same things that I'm doing. They're reading different articles. They're parts of different user groups. They're reading research papers. So you're absolutely right that there are a lot of products out there, and cloud storage is big. Cloud itself is big. I remember when cloud first came out, we really didn't know what it was, and we didn't know how big it was going to be. But now everything that we do, we're so reliant on the cloud. But I think that you know, what you have to do is just keep at it and know that everything that's out there may not be that good. It looks like there are a lot of products out there, but they all, you know, they may not be that good. And just, you know, keep talking to others and looking for reviews on things. That's another thing that you should do. So I hope that was.
Okay. I don't see any other hands held up. Anybody else?
Would you choose Steve Jobs' machine if you had a second chance?
Would I choose Steve Jobs for his machine, the next?
Yeah.
No. Not over a regular PC and the Microsoft products. No. You know, no. And he wouldn't choose it either because he didn't stick with it. He went on to Apple. Mhm. I see Desmond has a hand up.
Yes,
Desmond briefly. Okay.
how you doing? It's great to listen to what you've had to say. I really have questions. I'm just happy to hear what you had to say.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yep. And, you know, remember, you've got a story to tell somebody one day, too.
Oh, definitely. I tell stories all the time.
That's
I can
great.
attest to that. But I have another question if no one has any other question.
Sure, go ahead.
With the position that you hold right now, how did what position you held at Lehman Brothers, how did that translate to you wanting or you getting the experience where you felt comfortable putting yourself in a leadership position
At State Ed today?
At the state, yeah.
Well, let me ask you, do you mean leaving private sector to go into public? Or just...
I mean, from the experience side, like what specific things, what specific roles did you notice helped you in your ability to lead?
Okay, so my IT experience, that at the end of the day is my number one skill. Okay, so I manage 7 departments right now, of which IT is one of them. And IT is always going to be my heart. And that's always the one that when I sit down at the table with my CIO and the directors, that's where I'm always going to feel the most comfortable. I mean, that's my sweet spot. That's where I'm at. Now, the other departments, I would say that my management experience, okay, and my ability to, the experience that I had under my belt in solving problems and my eagerness to learn. So when I came to State Ed, I knew nothing about some of those other departments that I manage. HR is one of them. I don't have an HR background, but I've visited the HR department before. I had some idea of what they do. But in terms of managing HR, I mean, that was pretty scary. But I'm not one to shy away from learning things. So I went in. I also have a department that deals with special ed and children with disabilities. I don't know anything about that. At the time I didn't, but I was willing to learn. So I would say my years of experience, the skills that I've picked up along the way, and just the confidence. I think for me, it's all about being confident. I have a degree in marketing, and I am my best product that I've ever marketed. I can market myself like Michael Jordan can market sneakers. And that's what I've done all my life. So, yeah. No other questions?
And I agree with you with what you were saying when you said that the ability to ask the right questions is important.
Yo, absolutely. Never be afraid to ask a question. Don't sit and you don't understand. ask a clarifying question. May I ask a clarifying question? Who's going to tell you no? And if they do, that's probably not the place for you.
Right.
How did it? Oh, go ahead, Pat.
Thank you. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Pat.
You said it all started with the Wang machine?
Yeah, that was my first big technology outside of the typewriter. So I started on the typewriter, and then it was a Wang, W-A-N-G, word processor. And actually Wang, that was a real person.
So it's like coding? Is it like on a binary system of 0 and 1s?
No, it's a word processor. So it's like a glorified typewriter. So it's not coding at all. I mean, you're using that Wang machine to produce documents.
Okay. So that
it was like an interim piece where we went from typewriters to somewhat of our first attempt at a computer.
Yeah.
It was just basically a hardware box that just took and made typing so that you could save lines and do like very primitive of what we do today with like Word.
But that was
small screen.
I don't know that I would consider it coding.
No, it was not coding.
No, I don't believe it was coding, but it was pretty cutting edge in terms of just creating a document, you know. In the past, we used typewriters to do that. And with the typewriter, that required math, if you will, Pica and Elite, because you had to know how many characters could fit on a page, okay, and do it well. And that was one of the skills that I picked up from junior high school, learning how to look at a document and say to myself, okay, I want to reproduce this, a simple page, a page out of a book, and I want to reproduce this on this typewriter. How do I get all of these words accurately on this piece of paper? Because with a typewriter, before they created the backspace where it would actually erase, you had to use a little pencil if you made an error. Like, it was really crazy, right? I mean, and if you wanted to duplicate a page, we used to use carbon paper. I mean, kind of crazy. So here comes, don't laugh. So here comes the Wang word processor. And let me just say, I was at the very end of the typewriter era. Okay, I wasn't in the beginning. So here comes this Wang word processor that not only allows you to correct as you're going along, but it stored the document. Remember, on a typewriter, there was no storage. It was one and done. That was it. And if you needed multiple copies, if you didn't use that carbon paper, you had to retype those letters over and over again. So this machine, it stored your document so that you can go back and reuse it again, the same way that Microsoft Word works today. But this was pre-Microsoft. And for spreadsheets, we had to use a totally different machine. And if you wanted to put text and a graph on a page, we used to cut and paste, literally cut and paste and make a copy. And then you had your document. So you didn't know that, right? See?
Have you guys ever seen carbon paper?
Yes.
If you were in my office, I've got a piece in there.
Wait.
Imagine this too. Imagine putting carbon paper inside a typewriter, how difficult that is. That's not an easy task to do.
It's not easy.
My mother used to run a department in the Diocese of Rockville Center. I've seen those typewriters, the word processors.
Yeah.
People take the white out and just kind of paint over a letter. So
yeah.
Like, I've seen it.
Those were rough days, but the more skill you had, the easier it was for you to get a job, because they were looking for people that were skilled. So that's why I say to you, when my dad used to tell me back in junior high school that I needed to learn how to type, I thought he was crazy, but he knew that. He understood that that was going to open doors for me, and it did, because I built an entire career off of knowing how to type.
Yeah. And coding is now that same thing, right?
And coding is the same thing now. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. We depend so heavily on coders. One of the things with the reopening is, in order to reopen our facilities, we may have to do surveys for employees, may have to fill out a survey attesting that they don't have a fever, right? So I was talking to my head developer today, and I was like, look, we got to stand up something really quick. And this is what I wanted to do. I want using, when they log in, I want their, based on their login, I want their name to appear, the department. I want them to just attest that those 3 questions up top are true. If not, I want them to receive this message. If it's okay, I want them to receive that message. And then I need the managers. Now we've got, you know, over 3,000 employees. I need managers to be able to go in and just do a quick check to see how many employees have done this, how many of them are good, how many had to stay home today, things like that. And he was like, okay, got it. And I said, so that was my basic. That was the basic. Now I need you to perfect that. So I can't wait to see what they're gonna come back with on Tuesday. Okay. You know, that we do. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't even introduce myself, but I'm Natalie.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi. I wanted to know, like, as a person in the leader position, like, what is the most important quality to have as a leader, in your opinion?
To be able to listen. Okay. As a leader, you have to have good listening skills, because everybody doesn't communicate the same. All right. So I don't force a standard for communication on anyone. You know, you could have a developer that is the brightest person, like that could be your top developer, and maybe they don't communicate as well, or maybe they're not always comfortable communicating, right? So I pride myself on being a good listener. I'm always going to listen to staff, whether they're coming to me with work problems or whatever it is. Pride, always be a good listener. And don't be afraid to lead. I'm not afraid to lead. And I'm never going to leave my staff hanging out there. And if we screw up, I'm going to take the blame. I'm going to fall on the sword and say, we screwed up. It's on my watch. I'm the one responsible. I'm never going to point fingers at my director and say, well, you know, look what that person did. I take responsibility and I stand by my staff. So good listening skills and standing by my staff. And I have employees that have worked for me, you know, 20, 30 years ago, and they still call me today.
Mm-hmm. This is Deborah.
Oh, hey, Deborah.
Okay. Yes.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. I mean, it was so nice to listen to you know, the way that you explain your path to your career. It's so it's amazing, and it's so motivating too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really have a question, but I wanted to say that I absolutely appreciate the fact that you advise us to never be afraid to learn, because when I was looking at this program online, I was kind of nervous, because I was like, how am I gonna go through nursing? Because all my plan was to go back to nursing and keep studying, stay in the health, you know, stuff like that. But I was like, why not take a chance?
Yeah.
So yeah, and here I am, and today I'm thinking, I was like, that was the best choice that I've made, because I'm feeling like that I fit in it, and I'm falling in love with the technology world. So I was like, never say never, and don't be afraid to take the next step. So I totally appreciate everything you say about it.
Thank you, Deborah. And I want to read something to you that I read today. The bumblebee's wings are so thin and its body so big, it should not be able to fly. The only problem is the bee doesn't know that. Okay? The bee doesn't know that. So the bumblebee continues to fly because it doesn't know. So, and that's something else I would stress to all of you. I always surround myself with positive affirmations, because, you know, sometimes life gets rough, and, you know, sometimes people get on my last nerve. Yes, they do. Okay, they push me to the limit, and I just, you know, I want to handle it a different way. But I always take a deep breath. I might, you know, look at something that, a Post-it note that I might have off to the side that will remind me who I am and what I stand for. And I try to read something positive every day. And I actually read that today out of Acts of Faith. And that is today's May 22nd, at the Bumblebee. And I read that and I thought, yeah. So good segue into that.
I like that.
Yeah. Don't ever be afraid. You're the only
Positive affirmations too.
Yeah.
I love, like, they really do change your mindset, because sometimes you're your worst critic. Like my daughter, she's great with singing, and she'll be like, "Oh, my voice is horrible," and I'm like, "Don't do that. Like, you have a voice. You need to acknowledge that. Like, you're good at what you do." You know, because if you start to psych yourself out and just talk yourself down, then you're gonna believe that. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So positive affirmations, I do. I have like a whole board with just affirmations.
You should do that. And
That's
don't
why we
talk
got.
your.
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say,
No,
don't
I was
talk
gonna
yourself
say
out
that's
of.
why Lori always say that we gotta think out thinking. So
Yeah, that's right. You do. You really do. We are our own worst critics, right? And we can talk ourselves out of walking out the house. Okay, if we think about it hard enough, we'll come up with 50 million reasons why we shouldn't do something. But always take a chance. Always do your research, especially when you're job hunting. Okay, job hunting 101. Do the research on the company. You walk in there. Yes, you want the job, but you also want a job with an organization that's worthy. Okay, you don't want to just work for anybody. So when you walk in there and you interview for the job, you make sure that you understand the company that you're interested in working in. And when they say, "Do you have any questions?" Please have at least one or two questions. Don't sit there and say, "No, I think you've answered everything." No, they haven't. You've got a question. Always have a question. Interview them, because yes, you want the job, but you have to work there. And achieving job satisfaction is something that should be important to you. Okay. And I don't want to give the wrong impression. You're not going to be happy on your job every day. And I've already told you, that's why I have to have positive affirmations around. Because most time, if I'm not interested in killing a teacher, a principal, superintendent, a parent, okay, maybe the kids, no. I'm always ready to strangle somebody. But you know, achieving job satisfaction, at the end of the day, I love my job. Okay, I just don't like the people I work with. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. But achieving job satisfaction is important, and always have at least two questions when you go on your interviews. Do your research. Don't ever walk in somewhere and you don't know anything about that company. You should know, because if you're going to work there, you're going to spend a lot of hours there. So know where you're going to be working.
I'm glad Lori made the connection, because this is you dropped some good gems on us today, and that was great. I wrote some down. It was really great.
Awesome. On time is late. Write that one down.
Yeah,
I wrote that one down.
Also put down
is late.
That's something I have to focus on. So it's funny you said that, because I was like, "Damn, Lord, like really? You just."
That's right. Remember, I used to show up for those meetings on time and ready.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that you say there's never a problem, there's always a solution.
Yes. And your bosses will, that's how you get recognized. Okay, because it's real easy to sit back and say the room is on fire. Yes, the room is on fire. The room is on fire, but what are we gonna do about it? You be the one that says, yes, the room is on fire, but this is how we're gonna put the fire on. Yep. All right.
We're about 7 minutes to. Anybody have any final questions for Sharon before we thank her and let her go back to her day? All right. So Sharon, thank you so much for being part of this. This is, we'll look forward to having you come back on future cohorts to speak. Oh, we have Desmond. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Thanks, Sharon.
Try to connect with Sharon on LinkedIn.
Yes. So all the students, are part of their task and their homework assignment, Sharon, just so you know, is to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Okay. I'm not going to accept your connections.
So they will be, their goal here is to build a network of people that can inspire them and help them with careers. So
as you can tell, I love to have fun and I love to laugh.
Oh, Jesus.
I love to teach people. So I will be looking out for all of you. Lori, just make sure I have everyone's names so that I can make sure that I
Well,
write
they're
you
learning, what
notes
they're
on-
doing is they're learning how to use the add note. So they'll be very specific in there that they met you at the training session here with Nebula Academy. So they'll be outlining that in their 300 characters or less message when they do try to connect with you. Okay.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's great.
Okay. Because we're, not only this is not just a coding class, but this is also about building those soft skills and the networking skills that they're going to need to be successful.
Right. Work on your resumes. Always have your resumes updated. You never know.
Okay, so again, Sharon,
Right.
thank you so much
Thank you.
for being a part of this. We really appreciate it. We're going to be thanking you on LinkedIn publicly, and we'll be posting an article with some snippets from this conversation, and the full video will be available shortly as well. So we'll, make sure that you have access to that. And again, we'll be kind of putting a little recommendation on your LinkedIn profile too. Again, thanking you for supporting the organization. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks for making the connection, and good luck to all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Sharon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Take care, Sharon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right.